After October 7th, from October 7th, we saw the Palestinian propaganda machine go into full force into doing what they do. We had people like Gutierrez, the Secretary General of the UN, saying days after the attack, it didn't happen in a vacuum, essentially saying the Palestinians were right to do it. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened after decades of occupation. He walked it back a little bit, but not really. Francesca Albanese started using the term genocide, not to describe what the Palestinians have done, what they say they want to do, what every single Palestinian organization says is its only goal. But for Israel's defense of itself, she started using the term genocide within days, and we saw how that kind of got the ball rolling. And one of the first things that happened was South Africa filing a complaint against Israel in the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocide. Now, we talked about it a lot when it happened. We've talked a lot about it since when they were asking for more time to give evidence to the court. They were asking for the term genocide to be redefined so that we can actually accuse Israel of doing that, which we know they're not doing. Now it turns out, and we know, and we've talked about this as well, that South Africa is heavily funded by Iran, the Iranian regime, as was the attack itself. Now, there are some reports that South Africa may have started preparing their case for the court before the actual attack because they knew it was coming. Now, unlike other channels and whether they're news or commentary, we're okay with saying we don't know all the facts. We don't know that this is the case. We are going to keep looking at it and following it. It wouldn't be entirely surprising if South Africa did know, maybe not the details of what was coming, but did know that the Palestinians were planning to launch a war, and they would like Israel not to be able to take part in the war. They would like themselves to be the only ones shooting. Welcome to the reality show. I'm Razi Ginsburg. I'm joined by James Valiant and Daniel Kraus. Daniel, your first thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this came from Justin Lewis, representative of the UK-based judicial rights group CASISA. So for the most part, he basically wrote a letter and he argued for sanctions against South Africa, claiming that they have basically coordinated with Hamas, or they knew about October 7 and then coordinated with the International Court of Justice to basically put a case against them. Now, as with these sort of things, I would put it on sort of like a similar level to when we talk about someone like Witkoff. We don't have a direct evidence that he is bought in by Qataris, but there is enough to make us suspicious, enough to say there is a clear conflict of interest. Now, I think it's a similar when it comes to South Africa. So, for example, African National Congress, the ruling party in South Africa, they were going bankrupt, the party, and few days after they filed the case against Israel, they got money from both Qatar and Iran. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have basically did the quid pro quo. Not that good at Latin, but it's enough to make you suspicious and make you think, well, what is this exactly? What's going on here? Now, when it comes to sort of really deciding on this, unless there is some form of investigation, which would mean most likely investigation within South Africa, since I don't know how else you would find the actual connections. It's really hard to prove something like this. But when it comes to certain things, and when it comes to South African sort of relation with Israel itself, honestly, I don't know. There's about 5 countries, we should even deal with a few more. But basically, Western countries should only deal with Western countries. We should have pretty much no relations with most of the countries existing in the world right now. So this idea that there should be sanctions on South Africa, no nation should really deal with South Africa. If individuals in Western countries want to deal with it, they can, but they should get pretty much no protection from the government saying this is simply not a government worth its soil.
Yeah, and when you say Western countries, you mean countries, run with Western values. For anybody saying, "Oh, what about Japan?" Yeah,
Oh no,
that's
Japan,
yeah.
Taiwan. I mean, there are many countries that are not part of Europe or North America that I'm talking about. We're talking about some kind of respect for individual rights, some kind of legitimacy, some kind of respect for Enlightenment values. Yeah, exactly. But you know, South Africa has been a failed state and collapsing for many reasons. And economically, the politically things that are going on there domestically are horrific. So of course they're very dependent on, and they would be very dependent on money they get from the Qataris or from Iran. So we see the motive, and then of course we see the way they brought the case. As Razi pointed out, they were redefining all kinds of terms. Isn't it the rich irony there? Think of all the rich ironies here. South Africa is complaining about apartheid and genocide when the term apartheid was defined for what Iran once did and may still be doing in a reverse way. So, but then it's a completely failed state, dependent on this money, and they're the ones who bring action, and now an investigation is coming against them properly. What if they did know beforehand? That would show, that would demonstrate the coordination between Iran and all of its proxy groups before October 7th. That would be fascinating. That merits deep and serious investigation. So the folks who are bringing the case against Israel are themselves now getting investigated, which is another additional wonderful irony. And is that, again, would that be terribly surprising? They're redefining what genocide is and complaining about what Israel's doing. They were prepared with their legal briefs, ready to go. It would make perfect sense to me. Now, I don't have any, absolute evidence that South Africa knew that something was going to happen before October 7th. I don't, but it certainly merits investigation. I certainly suspect the South African government. The South African government has been despicably lying and going after Israel, even if it had to bend what gets called international law. They even had to bend what gets called international law to bring this case. So, let me put it this way: means, motive, opportunity. From my criminal law enforcement background, it just seems to me that they are. It's more than a person of interest, as we would say, more than a suspect. They should be the focus, the strong focus of an investigation on this. It wouldn't surprise me one little bit if the South African government, being on the take from Iran, knew all about it. And it wouldn't surprise me, and boy, would it prove that the whole thing was coordinated and understood beforehand. At least something was going to happen. And like I say, the ironies pile up rich here, don't they? It is South Africa that needs the investigation. It is South Africa that is redefining these terms. It is South Africa that is in the pocket of Iran. Well, of course, they're a failed state. They needed the money. It would make sense to me that they would do anything, being the kind of bad government that they are right now, and being on the take from Iran, given the way they've been so hostile and aggressive against Israel after Israel was the victim of an aggressive attack on October 7th. It shows the depth of the moral depravity of South Africa, just the facts we know. So would it surprise me? Not one little bit.
Yeah. Now, even if this is not the case and they didn't know anything, South Africa is a part of this war effort against Israel because their immediate response to Hamas slaughtering Israelis was to attempt to stop Israel from defending itself, while Hamas is saying we're going to do this again and again until there are no more Jews left to kill. So in any case, South Africa is guilty here. But the question, even if, they knew or what they knew, they may not have known, on October 7th at 6:29 or whenever the exact time of the attack happened, they may not have known that. They may have been told, look, a war is coming. We're going to start a war soon, and we need you to handle this aspect of the war, which is the ICJ. And because it makes more sense for South Africa to do it than for Iran themselves to do it, or Russia, or anybody else who isn't a signatory and to the ICJ, and or is a bit a harder sell as a supposedly country that we should listen to. So yeah, in any case, South Africa is a villain here. But if they are a villain to the point that they actually knew this was coming, then the claims. So this guy, the Lewis guy that you mentioned, Daniel, wants the U.S. to impose sanctions on South Africa, which of course makes perfect sense for the U.S. to do. At the very least, I mean, I would cut diplomatic ties with a country that's part of a war effort. But I do want to just quickly read. So Eitan Fishberger, a friend of the channel and somebody who you really should be following on X if you're not, he reported on this, and he's quoting from the article, and it says, as part of a political strategy, preparations were made before the October 7th atrocity against Israel to set mechanisms in place for approaching the ICC and the ICJ for protection from Israel's anticipated response, which is really it tells you all you need to know, Daniel.
Yeah, it's like when you're about to like rob a store and you have like on the speed dial a lawyer, basically. It is truly ridiculous, this whole thing. And somebody was saying about like South Africa is a failed state, and to me that's the most impressive part about South Africa is, for those who don't know, South Africa has been like the biggest gold producer. Like they had like the biggest gold mines for pretty much, I think, all of 20th century and most of 21st century, and still have a lot left. They're literally printing money. You cannot get like go further from the idea of like actually printing money, else and still failing at actually managing your economy, at actually managing your society, which again tells you about that, natural resources don't really matter when it comes to success of a nation. It is truly the ideas they handle, and the ideas that ruined both the economy and the society of South Africa. You can see it now on the international stage when they try to go after Israel. And as you said, I mean, even sort of the timeline, they filed the case against Israel on December 29th, 2023. So 2 months into into a
That's
war. Uh, the case itself, now, I think it cost like tens of millions just to file something like this, and is obviously something really hard to do. I'm really struggling to see how maybe you can file something like this. And the way it was also done is basically oftentimes you like it, the way this sort of work is more of like an injunction, basically just saying, oh, no, we need to start this and then we can find the evidence later. But let's just file this against Israel, which is what it was for the most part. And that's why it was also decided pretty fast. I mean, only a month later, January 26th, the court has already decided that there is a plausible case, that may be basically a plausible case to look into it, and ordered Israel to basically gather evidence that they are committing genocide. Now, this whole idea, the whole way it was filed, again, Israel is not a signatory to the Rome Statute that would have it involved within the ICJ, but technically the Palestinian territories are signatory to the Rome Statute, which means they, since it happened on sort of like their soil, despite the fact that Palestinian territories are represented by the Palestinian Authority, not by Hamas, technically, legally, I guess, Gaza is still considered part of the Palestinian territories ruled by the Palestinian Authority. So that's how they were able to do it. Now, again, you have to realize that they needed some other nation to do it. Hamas couldn't file it. Hamas is not a signatory. Hamas is not part of the UN, part of any pretty much international organization. So they needed somebody else. And South Africa offered very nicely to basically help them. Now, if it really was sort of, I think it sort of goes hand in hand. Oftentimes when somebody is paid for something, it's not like it's going completely against their values. It's usually somebody who would do it anyway, but is happy to also take some money for it. That's why that's why I think Qatar and Iran are spending money, and China, for that matter, are spending money in many of these African states. I mean, every state you buy is a chip in the UN. Every state you buy is a chip towards. Basically, you are literally buying votes. So that makes it really easy for them to influence the world, and that is another reason why we should really not care about what these nations say. Neither China or Iran or Qatar or any sort of authoritarian states in Africa, which is most of them. There's very few that even sort of deserve some form of relations at all.
Oh, much more than not care. We should care. We should care to the point that we morally denounce the IJC and the ICC. In fact, the UN in general and all of the these ridiculous international courts, which are in effect designed, and their main purpose these days is to be anti-Israel, is to be anti-Semitic. And now that we can see that, but you're right, so many African nations have been on the take now that we can see from these evil actors. It just increases the insanity of Western nations, civilized nations, let's put it that way, civilized nations even having anything to do with these international courts, these international bodies, which are nothing but international courts of injustice, international courts defending atrocities, terrorists, and dictators, because that's, like I say, that's all the United Nations itself has been for many decades, is a terrorist and dictatorship protection racket, as I put it. You know, one of the questioners when we were doing the daily objective said I wasn't grateful, I guess, to Mr. Trump. And well, let me pull it back here. Mr. Trump did mention South Africa the other day and did mention the need to perhaps impose sanctions on South Africa. And if he does so, then again, I'll give credit where credit is due. Mr. Trump, we can have no diplomatic relations with South Africa. And if it is only South Africa's opposition to Israel, that is a reason enough. You oppose our interests. You oppose the interests of civilization. Yes, you've destroyed your own country. There's little question about that. As you point out, there's no amount of natural resources, mineral resources, gold, diamonds, whatever else South Africa might have, that can make up for the fact that they were just a lousy government approaching their own governance of their own people in a miserable way. But being on the take from Iran and Qatar, and you know, you'd have made a great lawyer, Daniel, because you put together an amazing case there in less than 2 months. These cases, international cases before international courts, they take many millions of dollars, and they take expert lawyers to do full research. They were ready to go. It looked like they were ready to go from, and of course, we have to put that in the context, as Razi points out, there were leaders of the UN, major figures in the UN, who were already calling this genocide and evil before they filed the suit, but they were ready to go. They were, like that, less than 2 months. That is itself enough circumstantial evidence to make me strongly suspicious. And no, they may not have known that it would have been October 7th, and they may not have known exactly how and when. But the point is, it looks like it was any action that Israel might have taken to defend itself, they were ready to assault as the aggression, even though, of course, Israel were the victims of the horrific atrocities that we saw on October 7th. And think of that, though, the degree of the atrocities of October 7th, the surprise attack on civilians and so forth, that wasn't enough to give them any kind of moral pause, which shows you how despicably immoral the South African government are. And you can't trust people like that. These people are dishonest. These people are, if in the wake of October 7th, you're filing against Israel within 2 months, that tells you just how corrupt they are down to their very socks. Their very bone structure is evil in itself, that they are taking the side against Israel back in 2023 in the wake of the atrocities. No, it's an evil nation. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Obviously, they have the motive, being on the take, being desperate economically and being on the take from places like Qatar and Iran. So investigate this. Let's find out. We need to know. South Africa is an evil country because of the position, just simply for the position it's taken on Israel. I don't even need to get into the rest of the stuff. Yeah, well argued, Counselor Kraus.
Yeah, you said Daniel would make a great lawyer, but he's already as much of a lawyer as that court is a court. So, yeah.
That's
Speaking
true.
speaking of fake lawyers, Francesca Albanese, this is not really breaking news, but is news today. She has been confirmed for another term. What a surprise. Yeah, breaking news. No, seriously. But actually, there is
And,
breaking news.
And if
Go ahead.
America gets out of the United Nations or pulls out as much as possible, just anything America does, and again, I'll give Trump credit where credit is due. If every international organization that he pulls us out of, every UN affiliated court he pulls us out of and doesn't recognize, America doesn't recognize most of these courts either, nor are they signatories to the Rome Accord, as I understand. So, but nonetheless, we need to morally denounce them. We need to stop funding them. We need to get out of the UN in general. We need to push the United Nations General Assembly out of New York City altogether. But anything that Trump does in terms of pulling away, pulling out of, and denouncing the United Nations and all of these international organizations would be a really positive step in the right direction. We still don't have a UN ambassador confirmed for domestic political reasons from the United States, but let's hope that America never decides, something, we don't need a UN ambassador, because guess what? We get nothing from the United Nations. We no longer recognize them, and we're pulling out of all the accords in Geneva and San Francisco that created the UN way back in the 1940s. As far as I'm concerned, the only decent thing the UN ever did was to recognize Israel when it was created back in the late 1940s. Since then, the United Nations has been nothing but a sanctioner and an active support for evil, dictatorship, and terrorism.
Yeah, and also just to quickly point on that, and in relation to you not thanking Trump, again, Elise Stefanik was supposed to be one going into the UN, and she was pulled because Trump was afraid of her specific. I'm not sure if she's a congresswoman, right?
Congresswoman from New York State, and her
Yeah, and
district would
he was
normally be
afraid that her
Republican,
specific
but yeah.
he was afraid that her specific district, since if she went to the UN, she would have to step down as a congresswoman, that her district would sort of flip democratic. So
They've
again,
been
no.
dragging their feet in doing the special election to fill her spot until they're ready. So it could have been that they were doing it for timing and funding, and that would have been a Democrat replacing her spot, even though it normally goes Republican. But hey, does America need a UN ambassador at all, is what I'm asking. In fact, should we be the hosts for the UN General Assembly in New York City? No, we ought not to be. It's an evil organization. I can't think of an international organization that the UN is affiliated with, an international court, an international body right now that America should be affiliated with. It's the main funder for these things, by the way. And the American taxpayer, if he's looking for money, if Doge is looking for money to save, this is a no-brainer. This is a no-brainer. Stop funding all these international organizations, including the ICC, the IJC, the UN, you name it. Get it. Stop funding it. Stop supporting it. Stop giving it any kind of moral sanction, whatever.
All right, before we get to the super chats, we had a good news show on the Daily Objective. This is not really a good news show, but there is some good breaking news. So if you look, we talked on the Daily Objective about how things are reported in the media. If you look at reports right now of what's going on in Gaza, you'll see that 112 people died and so on. What you won't see is some of the specifics, but these are some of the specifics. So the IDF has eliminated Mohammed Hassan Mohammed Awad. Do you really need Mohammed twice? Anyway, a member of the Mujahideen brigades who on October 7th oversaw the kidnapping of Shiri Bibas and her two young sons, Ariel and Baby Kfir, and was likely involved in their murder. He is now where he belongs, and hopefully many, many more Palestinians who were involved or who were just celebrating will join him soon. That is very good news. I mean, this person, again, I've said Israel should have done more than it is doing now before October 7th. And this guy should have died before he did what he did. But he is dead now, and that's good news.
You make an incredibly good point there. October 7th happening, or go back before that 20 years to 9/11 in my country, and go back before that to all the terrorism that was happening in the 90s, and go back before that to all the terrorism in the 80s, and go back before that to the emergence of jihadism and the slaughter of Jews at the Munich Olympics, for example. What this has represented is decades of failure. When things like 9/11 or October 7th happen, they are, yeah, I will agree with Gutierrez. They did not happen in a vacuum. No, they happened as a result of comparatively civilized countries appeasing the most evil actors on this planet. And I mean that. The most evil actors on this planet have been appeased since the 70s by America and Israel. And those kind of horrific acts were the result of that appeasement. And we in the West, we think that somehow, if we're just nice to them, suddenly the dawn will emerge and the new light will happen and these people will reform, become new, transformed, good people if we just show how nice we are. No, that's not the way it works. These are the most savage, evil actors on the planet. You cannot give them any sanction. You cannot give them a centimeter. You have to act, and you have to act strongly, and you have to act when it's happening at the time. Ayn Rand said, in the wake of the Iranian takeover of the American embassy in Tehran, that we had a limited time and which should have happened almost immediately. And she made a devastatingly prescient point. She predicted exactly what was.
Should I give her exact words? Because I do
Please
have it
do.
right here.
Well, you just happen to have it right
Probably the
there.
most read Ayn Rand quote on this channel. This is a question from 1980. What should be the U.S. policy in the Iranian crisis? How should we get the hostages back? And this is her answer. Never to allow the country to get into that situation. It's certainly the fault of our foreign policy, and at present, there's no right course of action. It's too late. If we didn't march with force the first or second day after the hostages were taken, nothing we do after that will be any good, and it will take us years to live it down. I mean, the only flawed word in that is years. It turned out to be decades, which is, technically years. So yeah,
Much worse
absolutely
than,
right. And
yeah, boy, but she nailed it though, right? When something happens like that, there is a limited time, and the more time that passes after some horrible thing, that before the good guys stand up to defend themselves, the less credibility they have, the less effect they will have, the less the punishment will be, the less the deterrence will be. And, what you have to do is you have to get on it. You have to get on it quickly. You have to get on it within days. You cannot let weeks, months, years pass, or you're begging for it. You're begging for it with both hands. And of course, America and the West and Israel have gotten it with both hands. I mean, the Nice bombing in 2016 in Nice, France. I could go on and on and on. The bombing of the USS Cole, the attack on embassies in Africa, the attack on Jews in Buenos Aires. We have seen horrific terrorism in the last 40 years like we haven't seen at any comparable period that I can even think of. And it's precisely for the reasons that Miss Rand identified there. We did not act with moral clarity and strength immediately after it happened. In fact, we did nothing in the wake of the taking over of the embassy. And look at all the terrorism that Iran has sponsored in the last 45 years. How many Americans, how many Frenchmen, how many Brits, how many Israelis have to die before we get it?
yeah, I mean, that didn't happen in a vacuum statement. As you mentioned, it is true. Jews have been doing something that the Arab, certainly the Palestinian movement, but the wider Arab nationalist movement really weren't happy with. They were living. And they were living in an area where the Arabs didn't want them to live. And I'm sure Gutierrez, if a white supremacist gang in the U.S. went and slaughtered 1,200 black people, raped them, burnt them alive, took them hostages, Gutierrez would say, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Why are black people taking over white people's space? I'm sure he would say exactly that because, of course, he's not anti-Semitic. He's not singling out Israel. He is, of course, a principled man. All right. All right. Let's go to the super chats. Thank you, Akira, for the super chat. Akira says, can we send all the anti-Semites of the West there? No. Look, South Africa
Please,
is
no.
South Africa. When we did episodes on South Africa right after they started this, uh, there was about a month where the country where we got the most viewers was South Africa, and we were getting on every single episode. Look, this is not South Africa. This is the ANC. It's not all of us. Yeah, South Africa is not Gaza. There are innocent civilians in South Africa, and they're already in a tough spot, so they don't need any
Suffering
more
badly.
anti-Semite. Um, Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for another super chat. Or the first one on this show, but another one today. PC says, I say South Africa is suspicious. Um, one day an investigation is needed when this is over. Ireland, too, is suspicious. Yes, Ireland. I think it was Ireland Ireland and Amnesty International, right, who demanded to change the definition of genocide because Israel isn't actually committing genocide, but if we change what the word means, we can still convict them. And thank you, Knows Too Much, for the super chat. Knows Too Much says, one thing never changes. The supporters of Palestinianism are the worst people on the planet who cannot make a single argument without resorting to lies, false propaganda, and insane double standards. Absolutely, they are the worst people on the planet. I agree, and I agree with every word of that.
Yeah,
Um,
these are the most savage people. Jihadists in general, let me put it this way, and the ones who are up against Israel in particular are the most brutal savages on this planet. That it was well said, and we should always bear that in mind. Israel has been up against it for how long? And to immediately come out as South Africa does, they're the bad guys, after women were systematically raped, after children were burnt alive, after families were taken hostage, for South Africa to within 2 months didn't even pass, Daniel, before they are there with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit and high-powered lawyers with all the legal research, redefining genocide and saying how Israel are the bad guys in the wake of that. How evil can that possibly be, that you're coming to the aid and the defense of these kind of brutal savages? It's mind-boggling.
um, Jeanette says, our ANC government is so corrupt. There are many of us who support Israel. Yes, we know that. And all right, I
Yes,
think we're going to
my
have a
deepest
revolt.
sympathies for many of the good people in South Africa, of any race. They're suffering so badly, but it's your government. It's the ideology of your government, and you can see it in their foreign policy here. What animates that government? I pity any decent person in South Africa.
All right, we are going to have a revolt on our hands if we don't have Daniel say some words.
I'm
Daniel.
sorry.
I really like listening to you guys. You can continue. No, I mean, there's a few things to add. Well, first of all, this idea of didn't happen in a vacuum. I mean, it's really bad when every single argument that these people do reminds me of a Bill Burr joke, because it reminds me exactly of there's a joke where he says, he reads the news about, or he watches the news about how someone beat beat up his wife or something, and his he doesn't like watching the news because it's all sad, and he had like a random thought about going into his mind, basically, I wonder what she said before he did that, which is like that's a terrible thing, right? Because you're assuming she did something that deserved that. But, saying, we need to know after October 7 happens, it didn't happen in a vacuum. What you want to do is you are making the exact same thing. I wonder what she said beforehand. Basically, you want to blame Israel for getting attacked. You want to blame Israel for some terrorist group going through the border and attacking all the Jews and all the Arabs and few South Africans among them. So I'm wondering if South Africa really did know about it, because few South African nationals died on October 7th. This is exactly what they are trying to say, because nobody says, we shouldn't look at things in the context. We should only pinpoint like exactly what happened. Everybody agrees that everything should be looked at contextually. But when you say that right after October 7, you are clearly trying to justify it. You are clearly trying to excuse that sort of behavior because Israel, according to you, did something deserving of this sort of behavior. Um, And just to clarify, also that redefining genocide came sort of later after they realized they cannot prove a case
Right.
against Israel. Then they realized maybe we need a different definition for this.
Well, that's the problem when you set up the case before you start the war and know what you're actually going to argue against. That's kind of a problem. You don't exactly know what Israel is going to do, but you know whatever it does, you're going to accuse them of genocide. So yeah,
That's there's an old saying in the law that says if you got the facts, you argue the facts. If you don't have the facts, you argue the law. If you don't have the facts of the law, you go for pure emotion. And so they filed the case with the idea in mind that this, is obviously genocide, not realizing, of course, that the definitions, the words that international law uses hadn't caught up to them. But it didn't matter to them. It didn't matter to them what the international code books might actually say about what a refugee is, what apartheid is, what genocide is. It doesn't matter to these people. They will use the concept. They will drop all context. They won't even tell us what their definition is, where they're getting their definition. They just know Israel is in the wrong. And they knew immediately that Israel had done some horrible thing in the wake of the atrocities, as Daniel said, that cannot be justified by anything. By anything. You're right. What did she say before? As if words she said could have justified his violence at all. Whatever he said could have justified violence, against the woman. No, it doesn't work that way. They were convinced without any need for facts, law. They had their emotions on their side, and that was all it was going to be. And even if they have to, someone says to them, well, technically we can't get it under genocide. Well, that's no problem, because we just know Israel's wrong. They're inherently wrong. And when you point out that there were South African Israelis who were victims on October 7th, it's a funny thing. That doesn't make me think South Africa is less likely to have done this at all. They don't care about, it's different when as an American Israeli or a British Israeli, a South African Israelis, apparently the South African government doesn't give a crap about their own dual citizens, their own Jewish citizens. They don't give a two figs for it. Are you kidding? And it doesn't mitigate, in my mind, any of the suspicion that South Africa could have known that something was coming and were already preparing the legal case on behalf of their friends, the jihadists. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were other stories. I mean, I think there was it the cricket team captain, youth cricket team captain. This story was a while ago, who was Jewish, and I guess they didn't like that, so they took it away from him, and then I think he ended up coming up from the bench and winning the game for them. We did a show about this, so it was fresh in our mind when we did. But yeah, look, when you come to a court and you accuse somebody of something and then you say, I need it redefined, where does this work in any actual court of law where the law is clear? I mean, if I accuse James of, murdering me, and then the court says, well, you're still alive. And I say, well, yeah, but, he sneezed in my presence. And according to the Lancet, I might die in 10 years and it might be somehow related. So the court will throw me out, and I'd probably be held in contempt as well. And
well, another thing Ayn Rand said that for a law to be just, it has to be objective. It has to be clear. People have to know beforehand what it would violate and what wouldn't violate that law. And a minimum standard for justice has got to be that your laws are clear and objective. And the objectivity of law was, it is the universally plastic international law in which this realm, places like Britain and the United States, they would laugh you out of court if you did make such an accusation. You're still alive, being accused of being murdered. That would be a little problem, in any place that had semi-objective legal due process. But for the South Africans, none. And that tells you everything you need to know about their anti-Semitic hostility towards Israel.
But not just for South Africa. Again, it's the court that I have a problem with it. It doesn't even say, okay, now that you're asking us to redefine it, you are telling us that you don't believe you have a case. And that's the thing. Genocide has a definition. In no stretching of that definition is Israel's defensive war, half-assed defensive war in Gaza, anything like a genocide. Again, if you look at the actual definition, even wiping out Gaza would not qualify as a genocide. So but the court still takes them seriously and still engages with them, which tells you again, what you need to know about these courts, they are not legitimate. Daniel.
Exactly right. It's not just South Africa. It's the courts themselves. It's the way they're able to be, pushed around by, Elastic Man, South Africa with the elastic law and the elastic judges and the whole elastic institution, which is non-objective, unjust, and predisposed in their hatred towards Jews in Israel.
Wait, Daniel, I'll just quickly answer. This is the episode where Daniel doesn't get to talk, but you will
I'm so
get to talk in
sorry.
a few seconds. Um, Daniel's biggest fan says, "I hope there will be a full live for Mr. James to tell us the story of creation." Well, the first time James Valiant was on this channel, early November 2020, right?
Yeah.
Look it up. He was talking about that with me. That video is titled the same title as the book, Creating Christ. Look it up. Until the Palestinians decided to start this war. That was the most watched video on the channel. I think now it's not anywhere near the top 10. Sorry, James, but people share it, and maybe it will get back into the
We
race.
have grown. We have grown because we've had a moral clarity that you won't find anywhere else, ladies and gentlemen. What you find here is a moral clarity about international issues that I don't think you can find. Maybe there's one or two other speakers out there, but we are giving you a perspective you will not find elsewhere. And that's why the numbers have grown here. And if you want to help that out, if you think the message that we're giving is a good one, then please become a paid subscriber to the Ayn Rand Center UK. We are doing important work. We are one of the few voices of moral clarity when it comes to matters international that you'll find out there at all.
Yeah, and to the troll saying I want Daniel's babies, stay tuned for tomorrow's episode of the Daily Objective where babies come from. I don't think you fully understand how that works. Daniel.
Uh, I won't comment on that. I mean, going back to the International Court of Justice, I mean, the reason why we need objective law and the reason why I think the American system, when it comes to jury, is this unique thing, is the fact that you have to explain the law to 12 people who have no idea. Usually, I mean, sometimes you can have like lawyers in the jury, but generally it's just common people, people who have probably no interest in actually even being there, for that matter. But you have to explain it, and if you cannot explain the basis of a law to like common people, to basically lay people who have no basing in the law, that's a bad law. That's a law that cannot be followed. That's a law that should not be on the books. And when it comes to the Genocide Convention and the sort of basis for that, and the way what people are doing with it is also very destructive to the idea of objective law and to idea of ever trying. I mean, at this point, when can we ever try to bring any other nation to court for genocide? The biggest part of genocide is the, I think it's called the dolus specialis, which is similar to mens rea, basically criminal intent or criminal mind. Basically, you cannot commit genocide by accident. You cannot just like stumble upon and suddenly do genocide. That's why it's not just killing many people, or it's not something among those lines, or leading a war and during that war killing let's say millions of Germans. It's a specific intent to destroy the whole group, racial group, religious group, doesn't matter, specific group, in whole or in part. And it includes many things. And the way people are trying to use it, I mean, my favorite or the saddest part of technically application is that something that Russia has been doing. Russia has been kidnapping Ukrainian children, and that is actually one part of a genocide that could qualify under genocide. Basically, trying to take children from the other side and educate it in your own country. Now, there was a story in Gaza where a Palestinian child, I think like a 40-year-old boy or something like that, Hamas has sent him to an IDF camp. Now, IDF saw it, they fed the boy, and then they sent the boy back to Gaza. Now, that is,
And they bragged about it.
yeah.
Because look how great we are. We sent him back to his parents.
Yeah, and now the problem is if they started taking the children, which I think I could see it. I mean, there is no justification. There is no. This is the most like sensible thing we could do. Like really young children that really are innocent and have really no blame in this. But that would actually make the case that Israel is committing genocide if they start taking children.
If they
And
do the right thing.
I have to say, I've thought about that as well. I'm 100% pro taking very young children. When you kick out the Gazans, don't let them take the very young children. Those are human beings who might be future, productive, good people. And chances are, if they stay with their parents, they will become terrorists.
Well,
So,
see, in the United States or Great Britain, if a parent were to neglect a child so much that they would, be in the situation that Hamas has put their own children in today, it would be regarded as parent neglect, parent abuse. So when you send the Palestinian child back into the arms of Gazan Palestinians, what you're doing is facilitating their own child abuse. Facilitating their own child abuse. More than that, what we've been doing in the West has been paying for the warped education that UNRWA provides, training these children from their earliest age that it's a glorious thing to martyr yourself in the cause of killing Jews. Okay, no, we were talking in the Daily Objective about how Israeli occupation is really necessary. And whoever stays and whoever goes, the educational system has to be controlled by Israel. We cannot continue to allow Palestinian children to be brought up with this racist, mystic hatred of civilization and Israel and Jews that is murderous. I mean, it is child abuse. It is child abuse. You're throwing your own child's life away and submitting them to that. That's why these people are unfit to govern themselves. They're unfit parents. They're unfit educators. At the most basic human level, they are unfit to govern themselves.
yeah, and
yeah,
one point I wanted to make, somebody earlier mentioned, I think they had a problem with James about the way he spoke about South Africa and that there are some people who shouldn't be blamed for the actions of their government. And this is the biggest problem about the government is the fact that you do suffer the consequences of the government that you are under. That's why you need to speak out and you need to stand up whenever you can or get out. I mean, currently, my own government is taking the actions that might leave us out of NATO or out of EU pretty much for the foreseeable future. I'm really considering about like actually like staying here or wanting to live in a place like that. And for those people who really do disagree with the actions of their government, you should really think about. And again, this is not some sort of like altruistic, you shouldn't stay here because, of some principles. It's you will suffer the consequences of it. If it goes real bad, you will not be able to get out. You will be like the potential Palestinian in Gaza who is completely innocent out of everything. You will be at a point where you cannot get out, and your government will attack a free nation, and you might suffer the consequences of that, even if the other side wouldn't want it, even if the other side would want you to live. I mean, during World War II, it's not like we wanted to kill, especially, let's say, French people who were a part of the resistance, but they were the unfortunate consequences of the fact that we have to come back. So that's the most important part about sort of holding your own government accountable is that whether you like it or not, you will suffer the consequences of your government.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Politics is interested in you. So you can't afford to be not interested in politics. I think I'm twisting it and paraphrasing it from someone else, but
Yeah, I think the way I usually say it is you might not be interested in politics, but politics is very interested in you.
exactly, exactly. And for your own, and you're absolutely right that it's selfish. It's for your own life, your own success, your own happiness, and your loved ones, your family, the people you care about. Get the heck out is the only best option sometimes. But surely the abuse of the Palestinian people themselves is one of the keys here. And as adults, of course, they're moral agents. They know better. But on the other hand, there are these innocent children getting their minds warped into this suicidal death cult ideology. Um, that's child abuse.
Yeah, somebody in the chat, I won't say who because they deleted the message, but the post, but they said Elian Gonzalez. I mean, that's a memorable incident in the U.S. where a Cuban boy was sent back to Cuba. And it was shocking at the time, and it should be shocking. Deborah says in the chat, social services take children away from abusive parents all the time. Why not take them away? Yes, and these abusive parents are next level abusive. They are brainwashing these kids into thinking there is nothing in life that they should strive for other than a glorious death in the cause of killing Jews. So yeah, absolutely, it is. I think the real monstrosity is letting these people, raise their own children. The Light Life says Musab Yusuf would agree with you, Razi. We must protect the children. I can't do the Arabic accent, but yeah, but look, I agree we should protect children where possible. What I don't agree with is that Israel should sacrifice its soldiers because the Palestinians hide behind their own children. That I would not do. But once the fighting part of the war is over and the kicking them out part comes in, I would absolutely consider, where possible, saving those children from their despicable parents, and they will find, I'm sure, homes, elsewhere.
Yeah. Once you make schools your, military base, in effect, what you're doing is you're killing your own children. You're holding up a baby, in effect, as you're shooting at the other guy. Is the other guy supposed to not shoot back just because you're holding a baby in front of you? No, that's insane. He can't sacrifice his life because you're holding up your baby. But once the shooting is over, such people should never be allowed the care and custody of babies.
All right, we're out of time. Bonnie says James gives an ongoing weekly class on the Constitution to ARCUK members. Yes, that is to the highest levels of ARCUK members, Reardon Medal or Midas Mulligan, if you're signed up through the website, Inner Circle if you're signed up through YouTube. Absolutely worth it. When is the next session?
As next Thursday, we do it normally on Thursdays, and we have good stuff coming up here. We're going to finish off the body of the Constitution, but then the episode after that, the lecture after that, we're going to be doing the Bill of Rights. So really good stuff is coming up there. So if you really want to participate or hear my wisdom on the Bill of Rights, the American Bill of Rights, and its importance, please consider, again, joining at the highest level. Um, uh, we have
Yeah.
to wait a few days for the next one. And like I say, in 2 weeks is when we start the Bill of Rights. But that's where the really glorious stuff really begins.
Yeah, and there are many other perks for those levels, and of course, you help fund what we do by signing up to those membership levels. Zara asks how much. So Inner Circle membership is £45, although it varies from country to country. I believe it's $50 in the US. Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Through the website, Reardon Medal is £100 a month. Midas Mulligan is 500 a month, so not cheap. But again, many perks, and we get to keep doing what we're doing and maybe help change the world and move it in a better direction. Parting thoughts, Daniel, and where can people find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Damn Dan. It's should be in the description. Um, I don't know what to really add. I think, well, we most likely won't find out for real what South Africa, if they did know or didn't know. But for the most part, it should not matter. We shouldn't deal with these nations to begin with. Doesn't matter if they are engaged in this or not. We shouldn't be dealing with them through the UN. We shouldn't be dealing with them as governments. If individuals want to visit South Africa or want to deal with individuals in South Africa, they should most like, well, they definitely shouldn't be stopped. South Africa is not a direct enemy. But other than that, we should stop giving the nation, as it is right now, any kind of moral sanction.
James, parting thoughts, and where can people find more from you?
I totally agree with Daniel. Deal with South Africa at your own risk. civilized nations, just based on, and I don't care what the investigation finds about what they knew before October 7th or not, or whether they were preparing a legal case before or not. Daniel's point is correct. I second it wholeheartedly. Deal with South Africa at your own risk, people. Civilized governments don't sanction governments that take the position that South Africa has just on the question of Israel. I'm active almost every day on social media, especially Facebook. But you'll find me here. Another thing that subscribers can get at a lower level than the Constitution class is we're doing Leonard Peikoff's course on unity and epistemology and ethics. We're on lecture 2 this Saturday, where we're talking about the unity of philosophy and history. So check that out, ladies and gentlemen. You'll find me here, which is, we have the, as I said before, and I'll say again, we have a perspective you won't get anywhere else. I think the best that you'll find anywhere. So you'll find me here. Please support the Ayn Rand Center UK. You'll find it's worth it.
Yeah, and that course, by the way, we often get understandable complaints from objectivists saying, why is the Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube channel not talking about objectivism? That's not what we do on the channel. We apply it to current events and politics, and we do commentary. But yeah, behind even the lowest paywall, we do have that course that you mentioned, James. We have a weekly book club where we go through Atlas Shrugged. We have WhatsApp groups where you can engage with many of us on the channel. Some of us are still figuring WhatsApp out, but we're working on those people. And yeah, so you get a lot, and as mentioned, you get to support us. All right, I think we've done as much advertising for ourselves as you get, like on a typical show, the number of commercials. So I think we've ticked that box. Thanks guys for joining me. Thanks everybody for watching. We will be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective. Sunday as well. Monday, the reality show returns. Monday on the Daily Objective, I will be joined by Adam Mossoff to talk about Mahmoud Khalil, who we have talked about a lot, and also generally the issue of deportations, to what extent this is it a violation of free speech? I think you
I
know
just
what
want to say Professor Mossoff is a law professor, a leading legal expert in my country, and is an objectivist. Never ignore Professor Adam Mossoff. He is one of the smartest legal voices in this country. I say that as an American lawyer myself.
Yeah, Adam is great. He has been on the channel, and yeah, I look forward. James, he was with you, myself, Michael Kaufman on that glorious day when Hassan Nasrallah died, and we had that hour and a half long just party on the channel. So yeah, make sure you tune in for that. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Be safe.